introduce Reach IB. Reach IB, as most of you here might know, it's a boutique educational advisory firm, and it helps students and guides students to get admission in top-tier universities for their MBA studies, for their master's programs, and for their undergraduate degrees.
I'd now like to take the opportunity to introduce Vibha, the founder and CEO of Reach IV. Vibha holds an MBA degree from Harvard Business School. She is also an undergraduate from Carnegie Mellon University. She's done various courses across universities, including the Indian School of Business, as well as London School of Economics. Vibha sits on the Executive Council of the Harvard Club. She is also on the Admissions Council of Carnegie Mellon.
Thank you so much, Anisha. Going to start with introducing our first speaker, Gautam Shivakramani. Gautam got his MBA from MIT in 2009, received a Bachelor of Science from University of Notre Dame in 2005, double majoring in computer science and film. Gautam runs a very interesting company. He has a startup called Audio Compass. Before Audio Compass, he worked in strategy and operations at Deloitte Consulting, and before that, he was at a quantitative hedge fund in New York. Gautam's an active member of the MIT Alumni Club in Bombay. Our next speaker is Pritika Hingorani, got her master's in city planning from MIT's Department of Urban Studies and Planning in 2010. She graduated undergraduate from Bryn Mawr College in 2005. She also double majored in economics and political science and minored in growth and structure of cities. Pritika is currently the Associate Vice President at IDFC Policy Group, and she was on the admissions panel at both Bryn Mawr and at MIT. Our final speaker for today, Ruchi Jain. Ruchi graduated from MIT with her undergraduate degree in mechanical engineering and management. At MIT, she was a teaching assistant for the Solving Complex Problems class. She also got her MBA from Harvard Business School in 2013. Ruchi has worked with Bain & Company in Boston after MIT as a management consultant, and then returned to India to work with Teach for India as a staff member, and she currently works with HealthSpring, which is a healthcare startup. Ruchi is also on the admissions interviewing panel for MIT. And Gautam, you did a double major, computer science and film at undergrad, and then you did your MBA at business. So you have influences of engineering, you have influences of creativity, and then of course business. Was there some sort of planned approach to this, or did things just happen in random sequence?
I knew when I went into undergrad that I wanted to do computer science. For me, that was an interest area. I stumbled upon film by accident, and I think that's an advantage of any, I think, undergrad school in the US. They force you to take courses outside of your individual stream, whether it's engineering or business. So I ended up taking a lot of creative classes in film, and before I knew it, I had enough classes to get a film major.
Pritika, you went to Bryn Mawr in the US. Bryn Mawr College is a very, very strong liberal arts college in the US. And then you went back to MIT, so you went back to the US while you had worked in the middle in the UK. Why didn't you explore a master's program in a different geography?
The relationship that you get to develop with your professors at US institutions, and then what that leads to in terms of research opportunities, work opportunities, flexibility to explore whatever you want to do in your master's is really something that's unique to the US system.
Ruchi, you were in Bombay till the 10th, then went to Sevenoaks in the UK. Sevenoaks is a very prominent high school in England. So you spent 2 years there, and then you went to the US. So you've actually had the benefit of studying in 3 distinct geographies. Can you compare and contrast the geographies for us?
So I think 2 things really stuck out at me. So the first one is the application that the different systems require. And then the second thing that I think was very different at each of the institutions I went to was the student body.
It's considered a nerdy school. So if you have a friend who went to MIT, you're like, oh, Ruchi, no offense, but like, you guys must be nerds. So did you guys also have this impression, this inhibition that, oh my God, I'm going to MIT, I'm going to be considered and boxed into being a nerd? Or did you think, oh, I'm so cool, like, I want to be called a nerd? So what was your take on this?
Everyone has a lot of fun. I think it's definitely a myth, in terms of, people like wanting to study all the time. It's actually quite the opposite. There's a solid chunk of the class that's interested in technology or technology startups and applying technology in cool ways. I always say that MIT kind of helps you find that inner nerd that sort of lives inside you that you've suppressed.
As I explored the school more, I realized from Noam Chomsky, who teaches linguistics, to Joe Stiglitz in economics, there's a deep investment in disciplines outside science and technology. I mean, that said, even within urban planning, there is a big tech and data focus. So there's the MIT Sensible City Lab, which processes urban data so that you get better service delivery. So it's a nice mix of the arts.
I went in thinking MIT would be supremely nerdy, and I think MIT lived up to its reputation. And this might just be the difference maybe between the undergrad culture and then the grad culture. We went to robotics competitions for fun.
I want to actually get into some specific experiences of this quirkiness that all three of you shared. So I've heard of the famous piano drop. I'm guessing one of the panelists will talk about this. The lab for chocolate sciences. So just run us through some of the most quirkiest elements of MIT that you got to experience firsthand.
At the business school, we had these Thursday events called C functions. And it's actually a play on the economics term consumption function. It was a different kind of consumption that was actually happening at these events. They were basically MIT-sponsored events that were managed every week by a different student club.
One of my favorite activities at MIT was the chocolate lab. So you sign up, it's $15 for the year, and then they have functions from truffle making workshops to lectures on fair trade and chocolate tastings, of course. So basically every function ends with you having this massive bowl of chocolate.
I always say this, MIT is a place of drops. We just really like dropping things off tall buildings. So Vibha mentioned the piano drop, which is exactly as it sounds. So every semester on drop date. So drop date is the date about 3 months into the semester. It's the last date on which you can drop a class and not have it appear on your transcript. So if you're struggling with it and you don't think you're going to pass it and you don't want that to show up on your transcript or you're going to get a bad grade, you can drop it. This group of students just started this tradition. So they buy an old piano from somewhere and then off one of the dorms, Baker House, they go up onto the roof and then they just drop the piano off the roof.
Just jog back memory lane. Who was your favorite professor or a favorite class?
Two of my favorite classes. One was also very hands-on, which is a very typical MIT thing. We worked with the city government in China, and this was a city that was meant to be this huge SEZ and never took off. And so we worked with the city government, we worked with planners in Hong Kong, planners in the US to develop a revitalization plan for the city, from housing to transport. That was a fantastic experience. The other class that I loved, coming from a non-engineering background, I took water and sanitation for developing countries.
My favorite class was 2009, which is the product engineering and processes class. So it's the senior design class for mechanical engineering. And so in the class, you basically have to come in teams of 12, you come up with an idea and then you execute it. So you develop a new product and you manufacture it by the end of the semester.
So tell us about travel at MIT, what opportunities exist. If our students went there, what would they be exposed to?
In my 2 years at Sloan, I think I visited something like 10 or 12 new countries. But essentially, there's 4 types of travel that you could do when you're in business school.
One of the travel opportunities at MIT that's actually really cool is a program called MISTY, where basically you apply to MISTY and the MIT finds and pays for you to do internships across the world, from Chile to the Netherlands to Brazil.
So the travel I did, my 3rd year at MIT, I took an architecture class in Venice through MIT. So we spent 3 weeks in Venice studying the works of this one particular architect.
Can you talk about the kind of networks, friendships that you have built over the years?
Sloan is a small program, and MIT actually is comparatively not a very large school. So, the alumni network is definitely smaller at MIT than other schools. It's not an alumni network that's going to spoon feed you. You need to buy the spoon, go to them, and then maybe at that point you'll kind of get something out of it.
You find that people are extremely helpful. And relationships with professors in particular. I did research with my academic advisor all through MIT, and now that I'm back in India as well, even while I'm at IDFC, I still do research with him. And I think those relationships really help.
If you're looking for an alumni network in India, it's going to be very small at the undergraduate level. I mentioned the international quota that they have. So it just means, when you have 3 or 4 students per year, not everyone comes back. So we had 4 Indian students the year I went to MIT, and the other 3 are still in the States.
What is the MIT advantage?
For me, it was the men's at Manas philosophy of theirs. Mind and hand, learning by doing. I think that was probably the thing that set MIT apart for me.
Two other things that I noticed about MIT is, I think compared to most other top universities, it doesn't give you this sense of entitlement. Like, oh, now you're at MIT, you must be the smartest person. The world is at your feet. And the other thing that stood out is I think it's actually quite non-elitist in a way.
The MIT advantage for me was curiosity, collaboration, and community.
It's a myth we completely dispel at Reach IV, and I just want to get a sense from the panelists what their take on the recommendations are.
I made sure my recommenders were approachable and coachable. That doesn't mean I wrote the recommendation. I think that's the worst thing you can do to yourself, actually. But I made sure that my recommenders were people that I had worked with closely, that knew my style of working, knew me inside out.
One of the things that I was really particular about was I applied to 3 schools. So I gave my recommenders, a copy of my resume. I went and met all of them because by then I was in another city, and explained to them why specifically I wanted to go to each of those 3 programs. And I asked them to incorporate that into their letter of recommendation. And then when I was sitting on the other side, on the admissions panel, one thing I noticed is that faculty is impressed when they see that your recommender not only knows you, but knows why you want to do what you're doing.
So I think at the undergrad level, I would just suggest that you pick a teacher or a coach or a mentor who knows you really well and who can talk about more than just your academics.
Based on your experiences, what do you think is the right fit for MIT?
The right fit, again in quotes, is someone who is able to take a problem, figure it out, and get it done. It doesn't have to be, finding a cure for cancer.
You can't be afraid of hard work if you're going to MIT because it's a lot of work.
I wouldn't recommend trying to package yourself into some sort of mold that you think MIT is looking for.
Just want any advice for the parents in the room?
If you didn't know your child and read their application for the first time, you should be able to know them inside out. I think if that comes out in an application, to me, that's a good application.
The school picks you, and so they see something in your application that resonates with the culture of the school. So it's only if you're true to yourself in your application that you end up at the right place.
Everything together makes your application, so don't just fixate on one thing and ignore all the other stuff at the expense of that.